You lie down for a nap in the afternoon. Sunlight is still coming through the window. You close your eyes for what feels like 20 minutes. Then you open them again. And everything is wrong. The light is gone. The room is dark blue. The house is quiet in a way it wasn't before. For a few seconds, you don't know what day it is. You don't know what time it is. You don't even know how long you've been asleep. And underneath the confusion, there's something else. A heaviness. A strange sadness sitting in your chest with no obvious reason. You weren't sad before you closed your eyes. Nothing happened while you were asleep. So why does the world suddenly feel different? Why can something as ordinary as an afternoon nap leave you feeling strangely empty? The answer may have less to do with your life, and more to do with what happens in those strange few minutes between being asleep and fully awake. Start with the first thing that happens when you wake. Your brain doesn't switch on like a light. It comes back in pieces. Sleep researchers call part of this sleep inertia, the temporary period after waking when alertness and cognitive performance haven't completely returned to their normal waking level. You're awake. You can see the room. You can reach for your phone. You know where you are. But you're not necessarily operating at full capacity yet. Some aspects of attention and thinking can remain impaired immediately after waking and gradually recover as you spend more time awake. And that gap matters, because you can experience a feeling before you're fully ready to understand it. You wake up and think, why do I feel like this? But the mental machinery you normally use to put things into perspective is still catching up. So the feeling arrives first. The explanation comes later. And sometimes, the explanation never needed to exist in the first place. That's important because sleep inertia isn't only about feeling groggy. The transition between sleep and wakefulness can also affect how you experience your mood. So the sadness can be completely real, without necessarily being a message about your life. Then there's another variable. When you wake matters. Your body doesn't experience every hour of the day in exactly the same way. Your circadian system helps organize the timing of sleep, wakefulness, hormones, temperature, and other biological processes. And sleep inertia interacts with that timing. The same nap can feel completely different depending on when you take it and when you wake from it. The length of the nap matters too. A short nap may end before you enter deeper sleep. A longer one may take you further into sleep, making the transition back to wakefulness more difficult. So when you wake from a nap, it's not simply, how long was I asleep? It's also, when did I wake? And then there's the light. When you close your eyes in the afternoon, sunlight may still be filling the room. Without consciously thinking about it, your brain knows. It's daytime. Then you wake up later. The sun has moved. Maybe it's almost evening. Maybe the room is dark. The house sounds quieter. The entire environment feels different. Light is one of the most important signals your circadian system uses to stay synchronized with the outside world. It helps regulate the timing of sleep and wakefulness and influences the biological timing of melatonin. But here's the important part. The darkness doesn't simply make you sad. Your brain doesn't open its eyes, see a dark room, and decide that something is wrong. It's subtler than that. You went to sleep in one part of the day and woke up in another. You missed the transition. You didn't experience the afternoon gradually becoming evening. You didn't watch the light fade. You didn't feel the house getting quieter. You simply closed your eyes in one version of the world and opened them in another. Your brain has to catch up. And then there's the strange problem of time. You wake up and immediately ask, what time is it? That question seems ordinary, but it restores something important. Continuity. Before you slept, you were somewhere in the sequence of the day. Afterwards, you need to figure out where you are now. How long was I asleep? Did I miss something? Is it still afternoon? Is it evening? What am I supposed to be doing? For a few moments, the timeline can feel broken. Your waking life normally has continuity. You remember what happened 10 minutes ago. You know what happened before that. You have some idea of what's coming next. Then sleep interrupts the sequence. You close your eyes, and the next moment you remember is later. The world moved forward without you. For a few seconds, your mind has to reconstruct its place inside it. And that can feel surprisingly emotional. Now put everything together. You're waking from sleep. Your alertness hasn't completely recovered. Your thinking may still be slower than usual. Your sense of orientation is catching up. The time of day has changed. The light around you has changed. And your body is transitioning from one physiological state into another. None of that gives us a simple scientific formula for sadness. There isn't a switch in your brain that says, nap plus darkness equals sadness. Human emotion is much more complicated than that. What we do know is that sleep inertia can temporarily affect alertness, cognition, orientation, and in some circumstances, mood. Its intensity can vary depending on things like sleep duration, prior sleep, and circadian timing. What we can't reduce to one simple mechanism is why one person wakes up irritated. Another wakes up anxious. Another feels peaceful. And someone else suddenly feels inexplicably sad. And that uncertainty is actually the most interesting part. Because when an emotion appears without an obvious cause, we instinctively assume the cause must be hidden somewhere inside us. So we start searching. Am I unhappy? Did I forget something? Is something wrong with my life? Why do I suddenly feel lonely? Sometimes those questions are worth asking, but not necessarily in the first few minutes after waking. Because there's a difference between feeling something and knowing what it means. You can wake up lonely without having lost anyone. You can feel nostalgic without knowing what you're nostalgic for. You can feel heavy without anything heavy having happened. The emotion is real, but the story your mind attaches to it may not be. So what should you do when this happens? First, give yourself a little time. Don't immediately turn the feeling into a diagnosis of your life. Get up. Open the curtains. Turn on the lights if the room is dark. Let your eyes take in the environment. Move around. Drink some water. Check the time. Remember what day it is. Remind yourself what you're doing next. You're giving your brain information. Light, movement, context, continuity. And as you spend more time awake, sleep inertia generally begins to fade. The fog lifts. Your thoughts become clearer. The room becomes familiar again. The timeline comes back. And sometimes, the sadness disappears with it. That's the part worth remembering. You don't necessarily have to solve the feeling. You may just have to outgrow it. Of course, if you regularly feel depressed or emotionally low outside of sleep, or the feeling persists long after you've fully woken up, that's different. Nap shouldn't become an explanation for something that may have another cause. But that strange sadness that appears almost immediately after waking, the one that seems to come from nowhere, you don't have to give it a story. You don't have to assume it's your subconscious revealing some hidden truth. You don't have to believe that the first emotion you feel after waking is a verdict on your life. Sometimes, you're simply not fully awake yet. Sometimes your body is still catching up with the time of day. Sometimes your mind is trying to reconstruct where it is. And sometimes, the world changed while you were gone. You lie down for a nap in the afternoon. Sunlight is still coming through the window. You close your eyes. And somewhere between one moment and the next, the day moves forward without you. You wake up in darkness. The room is quiet. For a few seconds, everything feels unfamiliar. And that heaviness settles in. But now you know what it might be. Not necessarily sadness. Not necessarily nostalgia. Not a hidden truth about your life. Just a brain waking up to a world it didn't expect. Trying to reconnect the lights, the time, the room, and you. And for a few strange minutes, before everything clicks back into place, you're simply finding the thread of the day again.